Hello, and welcome to this first lecture of this new section on people and organization for excellence in digital strategy. So, in this in this fresh section, what we will do is to help you understand how to build right people and organization needed for formulating and implementing a winning digital strategy for any organization, including yours. And in the first lecture, we'll talk about what drives the right people in organization while doing the digitalization and what are the different types of organization needed. We will recap them. We had talked about it earlier, if you can remember. And in the next lecture, we'll talk about some of the common ways. And one of the common ways will be the agile, and we will look at how can we implement agile at scale. So, what determines right people in organization? What do you think drives the organization and people being right for you for your digital strategy? Any thoughts? See, it is the business strategy, and that's why you formulate business strategy at the beginning itself, because the business strategy determines the direction, and that is what you need to execute to do well in your digitalization process. And if you have your enablers specifically starting with people and organization, you need to design in so that you can implement that business strategy well. And that is how the business strategy will determine right people and organization. If your people and organization is not aligned to your business strategy, is not designed to support the business strategy, how would you implement the business strategy is the question. So how does the business strategy determine the right people and organization? And we saw there are five business types of environment in which you can set up five different ways of doing business driven by digital. And we saw that in an environment which is not really predictable and not malleable, you can use the classical way, the normal way of doing our business strategy. In the environment which is unpredictable but still not malleable, you have to adapt to the organization and you do the adaptive strategy. If you have an environment that is predictable but malleable, you can shape, then you do a visionary strategy. And in an environment which is unpredictable but can be shaped, you use a shaping strategy. And in a harsh environment, you use a renewal strategy. So these are the five strategies. And for each of these, we had defined, if you remember, if you want to implement, what kind of organization would you need? So let's take a quick recap at what kind of organizations would you need for each of these strategies based on the environment that you selected. So you see very clearly that organization is dependent on the good, successful determination of an organization is dependent on what is your business strategy that you want to drive. So let's look at the classical strategy. For a classical strategy, we had said that basically you need an organization geared for excellence in what it does repeatedly, because in a classical strategy, sustainable competitive advantage is the core, right? So you need to keep doing things regularly, repeatedly, and there you need to be excellent, whether it is differentiation, whether it is cost, whether it is any other capability. And as you saw that a classical strategy success is dependent on specialization, delegation, and standardization, and that's what the organization needs to do. The organization needs to be relatively hierarchical and very clear operating procedures. So in nutshell, that's a organization that you need for implementing successfully the classical strategy. Can you recall, what kind of strategy do you need for implementing adaptive strategy? There's a lot of things that you need to do for adaptive organization. First, let's recap that in adaptive strategy, you need an organization that can capture and share the external signals and generate and manage a portfolio of experiments effectively. So the organization needs to be externally oriented. It should be information enabled. It should be decentralized because the whole innovation will happen throughout the organization. And you should be flexible enough to reallocate resources quickly as the experimentation is all, because you don't know what is the right thing, what is the right strategy. The strategy emerges. You need to have customers embedded in the processes for building strong feedback mechanisms or creating user communities as part of organizational model. Broadly information enabled, your organization should be. You should make the data visualization analytics available throughout the organization so that employees can spot changes and formulate an effective and fast response. The organization needs to be autonomous, relatively fat, and decentralized. See a difference from a classical strategy? There we needed a hierarchical organization. Informal, temporary, and horizontal structuralized internal forum, task forces, and councils of great value in such kind of organization. Let us now look at in implementing visionary strategy, what kind of organization that you need. And you have lots of things on your screen here. I don't want you to read. I will pick the right things and tell you. First, the visionary organization must deliver the vision quickly with fidelity to the goal, but with the flexibility to overcome unseen obstacles, and the means should be flexible. So it's a combination of fixity in goals and flexibility in the means. So the vision needs to be combined top-down hierarchy or direction with a flexible, informal organization that minimizes cumbersome rules and processes. Right? So that's the kind of organization. Explicit guiding principles in clear direction is needed in this organization. Only the long-term goal is fixed. The short-term flexibility needs to be provided. Visionary organizations do not need the same level or kind of diversity, organizational diversity as we saw in adaptive companies because direction is preset. Whereas in adaptive, the direction or the strategy also emerges. In this, the kind of goal is very clearly set. While you need short-term flexibility. To maintain short-term flexibility, visually firms usually are informal. Firms are usually informal, allocate resources with flexibility, and limit their detailed operating procedures and specialization. They maintain cross-functional teams and encourage direct communication between top management and shop floor to help facilitate faster decision making. Visionary firms do not require kind of detailed operating procedure that you need in classical firm, right? The mindset shift is particularly important, but difficult, but important for large corporations. Now, the large corporations have entrenched processes do not convert into formal and flexibility that is required to support a visionary approach. Large firms might therefore need to separate the visionary unit from the core businesses. So for the large firms, there's a separate formula that you may need to have a separate spin-off unit for doing this from the core business, or otherwise you make the whole change happen in the whole organization. The visionary approach is more frequently the beginning in the strategic journey. Hence, the successful vision leader anticipates and gradually introduce features of the next strategic approach when appropriate. The eventual switch towards another approach is usually necessary because informality and top-down focus on the single purpose makes visionary firms great, can sometimes self-limit them as they scale and mature. So that is the kind of organization that you need for implementing a visionary strategy. What about the shaping strategy? As in like the other approaches to strategy, the key unit of analysis in shaping strategy is the business ecosystem, not the firms itself. So this larger view has implication for organization structure, culture, and leadership. So let's look at what kind of implications does it have for organization structure. The shaping organization needs to be open to and intertwined with external environment in order to extend the reach beyond the boundaries of the firm and build a trust with the external organization. This means that the orchestrating firm should have few organizational boundaries. They should leverage resources and knowledge externally and give up a certain degree of control by leveraging the same market-based mechanism as the ecosystem itself. For instance, orchestrating firm might integrate itself with other stakeholders by rotating staff, investing in upstream and downstream ecosystem players, or by sharing IP. This open organization approach can require a mindset shift, especially for leaders and employees who are used to clear division between them and us. It requires comfort of letting go. So instead of strict detailed operating rules, leaders set broad guidelines to foster external collaboration. The renewal strategy, organization structure, again we saw there are two parts of the renewal. I'm not going to read through and I don't want you to read through this detailed chart. You can maybe take a look at this later. So renewal strategy basically has two main parts. One is the economizing phase, as you see. An economizing phase, you need to have very clear goals as well as rules and operating procedures to bring back the organization to a state of health again, stop bleeding. And for that, you need an organization that is probably temporary, a project management organization superimposed on top of your current organization. Because once this economizing phase is over, you can do away with that. And the second part would be you don't know clearly what the rest of the organization should be, because it entirely depends on what kind of strategic approach do you take. So broadly, you need to focus on the organization required for the first economizing stage, which could basically be a temporary POM kind of organization, and you need to keep right sizing the organization for the next phase of work here. So having looked at what are the different kinds of organization you need for different types of strategic approaches or strategies that you will follow for digitization, what do we do next? So there are some common ways to organize for digital transformation, and that's what we will take a look at in the next lecture. So thank you so much for watching this first lecture of this new module on people and organization. I hope you have again learned something new, you have enjoyed, and I do look forward to see you again in the next lecture.